What is up, guys? It is the Coach's Corner. Myself, my guy, Coach Fred. We are back. It's rivalry week, week 13 of college football, man. And it's a big one. And listen, this episode is going to be strictly FBS. We got the FCS playoffs, man. You can catch my thoughts on that on the website, and we'll have a live stream later on the show, man. But we got too many big games this week on the slate. But, Coach, first off, huge weekend. Me and you got to catch up in Lorman. We had the Players Corner last Friday night, man. Big game. Y'all had a great game against Jackson, man. Came up just short. How are you guys feeling? And what's kind of been the off-season schedule for you right now?
Oh man, it was a big game, man. Again, appreciate you coming down. You're looking at 45,000 folks on the yard, man. The atmosphere was absolutely crazy from start to finish. The kids played hard, fell short, and that feeling never kind of changes, even though it's the last game. That feeling, of falling short never changes, and it was kind of a tough Sunday meeting as we met with the kids because they felt like they had, played or even outplayed, our opponent in certain situations, and only to fall short. And, me and you kind of talked off camera, and I don't want to get into a lot of it, but, things happen that are out of our control. You hate to see it. But it's just what it is. You just have to keep your head down and keep playing. And our kids fought through all the adversity and, just came up a little short at the end.
And before we get into the games, there's one player I just want to ask you about because everyone talks about CJ Bowler. Everyone talks about the stars of the team, Malachi Bailey, Claude, Terrence, but Montario Hunt is a name that is no surprise to me or you, but a lot of people around the country right now are looking at him as someone who broke out this weekend. Can you just speak a little bit about what this weekend kind of did for him perception wise and why that's not a surprise to you?
Not a surprise to me because, like I said, he's in my room, work with him every day. It was just a matter of it just kind of building from week to week. And then us just kind of finding a way to make sure we get the football to him. He had the conference long touchdown up to this point versus McNeese. Got hot against Texas Southern with a deep one. Just one of those kids, man, that works hard and has stayed the course. Like you said, he's not the third name. He's not the fourth name. He's not the fifth big name that we have. But he stayed the course, continues to work. And I think what this did for him on that stage was something that is going to be a tremendous help for us going forward because now he knows. He already knew, but now he knows, the level that he can compete, the level of expectations that I've been telling him I have for him all year. This is why I've been telling you this. This is why I'm on you about cutting your route short. This is why I'm on you about not finishing at the end because I see what it is. And I think now he sees, okay, I see what coach is talking about. And it usually takes them later than sooner. But this, I think he'll see or has seen. And I expect a lot different from him coming into the offseason, which they've already talked about starting. When you don't have to talk about it as coaches, your players talk about it. Hey, we got a week and a half before we go home for Christmas. We need to still have weights. We need to still be, conditioning. And they are taking ownership in that. And he's one of the ones that's taking ownership in that, making sure, hey, guys, we still got a work schedule. We got finals. But, look, we got to figure out a way to get in this weight room in these time slots and make sure everybody's here. So it's put him in a position of where he's becoming an automatic leader where we don't have to talk about it. He just does it. And I think that as coaches, that makes our job a lot easier.
It definitely does, man. Like you said, the environment, I'll say this because, I got a lot of different people who watch the show, and our coach's corner isn't really specifically one division. I don't care if you're an HBCU grad, a non HBCU grad, whatever your favorite team is, going to the Soul Bowl one time has to be on the bucket list, man. That is one of the best environments I've ever been to for a game. And I had an absolute blast this weekend. By far the best game I've been to this season. I would say that.
Man,
And I mean, I've been to Power Five SEC games, SEC championships, bowl games. That one's up there with one of the most memorable weekends I've had. And I don't. I think it ages you a little bit, Coach. Sitting on the stretch at 5 o'clock in the morning at pitch black on the stretch. It's
Man,
cold. That ages a man. It really does.
man,
You don't know Lorman, Mississippi until you sit in bumper to bumper traffic on the stretch at 5 a.m.
man. Or I'd have to send you videos us trying to get from one side of campus to the other side to the stadium was just absolutely crazy. And hats off to them. Hats off to our kids for handling that, because when you're trying to get what would be a 5-7 minute walk tops from the cafeteria to the stadium turns into a 35-minute drive. And all you're seeing is people, barbecue grills, sound systems, your school colors, their school colors. And that's all you're seeing for that, that drive. To hold their composure and come out and compete and not lose it, man, hats off to both teams.
Hey, for sure, guys. You can catch the highlights of the game on the channel, and the photo gallery is on the website already. So you can check that there, thebluebloodspod.com. But, Coach, we
Boo
got
the
four
replay
big
official.
Do what?
Boo the replay official.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. The holding call was tough too. I'll just put that out there. The holding call was a little bit tough, but listen, we were picking matchups, and Coach said that we were not going to record this episode without talking about this matchup. We got a Friday matchup, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC, Florida versus number 16 Florida State. And you see Coach pulling out his merch. I already knew it was coming. Coach, I don't even have to ask you. I don't even have to ask you who you're going to pick. Tell me why your Seminoles are gonna pull it out at home this week against Florida.
And it's I was gonna say it's no bias, but it's bias. Florida gives up 400 yards a game. FSU is right at or a little over 400 yards a game on offense. Something's got to give. And if it was on the road, maybe, but we're talking about at home. All the momentum is right there in Doak Campbell Stadium. I got to go with them just because the Gator defense has failed them a couple times this year. And when you're talking about giving up over 400 yards of offense any given game, now you're talking about going into a hostile environment, and you're kind of on a free fall, so to speak. I think if FSU, Jordan, can stay away from the big early turnover to give them life, I think FSU controls this one from start to finish.
I know they haven't played a ranked team in the stretch, but they competed with Clemson very well a few weeks ago. But the 4-game run that they've been on has been impressive. Georgia Tech just beat UNC. Miami and Syracuse have both knocked off some big teams, and those games were both on the road. Louisiana Lafayette is not your average group of 5 team. I don't think that's a cupcake group of 5 game, and they've thoroughly beat every single one of those teams on this 4-game winning streak. And I think an underrated aspect, you talk about the offense. We know they're averaging over 470 right now per game. The secret to me for Florida State's turnaround was the development of the defense. I think coming into the season, at least for me, I expected Jordan Travis and this offense to have to carry this team. The defense is doing an amazing job, allowing less than 300 per game right now, less than 20 points per game. And I think that could be the X factor, because we know the one thing about Florida. Against bad defenses, they can put up points because they got athletes everywhere. They have playmakers. But when they face those defenses that can force turnovers, play tough defense in key situations, and make it really difficult for Anthony Richardson to establish his rhythm, that's where Florida kind of falls off. And, Coach, from a coaching perspective, how do you get your team to refocus and rebound when you lose to a Vanderbilt or lose to a team that no one expected you for them to even compete with you, and then you go on the road and lose to Vanderbilt in Nashville?
That's tough because, like you said, no one expected it. Probably, and I'm going out on a limb, but probably no one in a Vandy uniform expected it until about midway through the third quarter. Then they were like, "Oh, we can do this," that kind of thing. And you, again, as we talk about every week, you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds. That mindset of, man, we just lost to the worst team in the conference. That's tough, man. So this week for Florida, for UF, had to have been a tough week just to get the morale back, to get the bounce back, because you know where you're heading. Rival game, we need you guys moving around. We need to be fully prepared for what we got, but you got to take care of some egos. There's some things that you got to fix. At the end of the day, you just hit on it. FSU's front seven is cooking. Florida's front five, not so much. So, you hit it on the head. Now, if they got those guys back to where they need to be, and they shouldn't have to say a word. It's a rival, and we know what Florida State means. They shouldn't have to say a word. But at the end of the day, it's still in the back of their mind, man, we lost to Vandy, and we got to go up here and face FSU. How do you get that out? And if FSU does something early, like me and you kind of talked about, one of those first 5-10 minutes, and it just goes boom, boom, now we're in that situation where everybody's sitting there with that look on their face saying, oh, man, here we go again. That kind of thing. So FSU D-line, get to Anthony Richardson, force him into being a pocket guy, not letting him make plays with his legs, get him into a couple turnovers early, and this could be a runaway.
Yeah, if you're Florida, you got to establish the rushing attack. If I would have told people in August that projecting to November that I thought Florida State would have the quarterback advantage in this game, people probably would have absolutely just went insane in the comments. I think right now, I don't understand it. I'm gonna flip the question to you in a second. I don't understand how Anthony Richardson consistently gets labeled with a top 5 quarterback in college football or a top 5 quarterback in the draft. I don't see it. He's supremely athletic. He's got the size, but man, I have not seen a single thing in a crucial game on the field that says he's that type of guy. And Jordan Travis has really increased his game this year. He has taken a major step forward in his game. 21 touchdowns, only 4 picks this year, and we know what he can do with his legs when he gets out of the pocket. He's as dynamic as they come. And then also Benson's been a huge factor on the ground this year for Florida State, and they've hit
Yes.
on a few transfer wide receivers as well that have come in and really been, I would say, key players in this offense. I think Florida State has too much offensively, and I think that defense makes enough key plays. 9.5 is a lot in a rivalry game, though. I will say that.
Right.
I think it's going to be flirting around that line, but give me Florida State by 7 over the Gators. But, Coach, from a coaching perspective, what is your opinion on Anthony Richardson as an NFL prospect right now?
Well, Anthony Richardson, let me touch on something real quick with Jordan Travis, that inside information. They said the biggest thing for them and the team with this young man, was him inserting himself as the leader of that team, not just of the offense, but of the team. And I think that's kind of where they've kind of taken off, because they are now all following Jordan Travis. It's not a revolving door. This is his team. This is his position. And I think that's been big. And then the fact that he has Johnny Wilson to throw, bail him out of trouble every now and then. You can't go wrong with a 6'7" receiver. But Anthony, I think at times he does those things where he has a flash and you're like, whoa. But I'm like you. You can't have 1 out of 15 flashes and still be projected, to me. And, I just coach at little old FCS school. But at some point, the expectations or the potential has got to meet somewhere. And it just hasn't done that for me either. And, not downing the young man or anything like that. But as far as a first day, I don't see it. I haven't seen it. And I know, potential and everything that's been talked about it over his career. I just haven't seen it consistently enough to say that one of the 32 big teams is going to sink a lot of money into an up and down type of situation. I don't see it. You can't have 1 out of 15. That's not even good in baseball, if that makes sense. That analogy. It was always put, in baseball, if you come to the plate 10 times and you make contact 4 times and get it in play, you'll be a millionaire. But that's not the same when we're talking football. Not the same.
And, listen, I don't think he's a finished prospect either. I think if you draft him next, if he comes out, because he's a redshirt sophomore, so he could technically come out, he can come back. If you take him, it's a project. I don't think this is a day one guy at the next level. I think if he's smart and listens to the people close to him, another year in college, man, he could have a break. We saw Joe Burrow. 2018 Joe Burrow is not an NFL quarterback, and he came
No.
back and we saw what he was. Anthony Richardson's still young and he can develop. And so that's why I'm trying to make sure I agree with you. I'm not hating on the kid or downing his game. I just don't see a first round top 5 pick from what I've seen. And like there were scouts coaching coming into the season that had him above Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in terms of
Yes.
NFL prospect. And like for me, if you're going to put expectations like that on somebody, I
Just
need
got
to
to show up.
see. Yeah, you got to show up. And then also, too, I think it's unfair to Richardson because, coach, you can probably relate to this because you're a coach and you have to listen to us media people do this all the time. A lot of media are lazy with their comparisons of players. And just because he's 6'4, 6'5, 230, 240 does not, and plays at Florida, does not mean he's Cam Newton.
No.
Like, we got to stop. Like, I don't think people understand what type of expectations you put on a kid if you say he is Cameron Newton, who won the Heisman Trophy and was the first overall pick, NFL MVP. Like, listen, be a little bit more, I would say, analytical with your comparisons. Don't just say because he is built like this guy or looks like this guy that he's that. Like, analyze the game actually. And I don't think his pass, like, I don't think he has the arm of a Cam Newton, in my opinion.
No. No. And when they do that, I'm like you. To me, they are lessening what Cam Newton did at that point. I mean, he's a beast. He was a beast. And just because, like you said, it matches up on paper doesn't mean it's going to match up on the grass. And I think a lot of times people do that. They do that in the recruiting world as well. Hey, coach, man, I got a kid, man, who runs a 4.3. Okay, he runs a 4.3, but if we run a stop route, it takes him 10 yards to stop, that kind of thing. There's a whole bunch of factors that factor into being a Cam Newton. And I'm like you, I don't think they really get out and turn over stones like my boy Blue does and actually see that we're talking about the apples to oranges when we're talking about that at this stage. Can he turn into it? Sure. Is he that right now? No. Not even
No.
Auburn Cam Newton. No.
No, definitely not Auburn Cam Newton. You never know because listen, Cam was good early at Florida, but he was behind Tebow and he wasn't starting as a redshirt sophomore. And he was also went to the blend route, had a whole year at JUCO where he led them to a national championship. So I think Anthony Richardson for me is a wait and see. But guys, we're both taking the Seminoles this
Yes,
weekend
sir.
over the Gators Friday night, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. But we're going out west, Coach. 2:30 p.m. Central Time, ABC again. Oregon State, man. This is a huge rivalry game. And coach, do the Ducks get it done and keep the special season alive with the top 10 ranking?
Yes. And when you sent the games we were talking about, I knew this was a pretty intense, pretty old rivalry, but I didn't know that it went as deep as it, freaking does. I think Oregon does. When you're talking about over 500 yards of offense a game, man, that's a lot of offense. If Bo can keep away from the big Bo mistakes, there's no doubt in the mind. I mean, they're averaging 40 points. Oregon's 32 points a game. The only hope Oregon State has is not to let this turn into a track meet to me, which is where Martinez has to come in, and they've got to have a willingness to stick to the run, to keep that clock moving, to keep Bo and that offense on the side. If it turns into a track meet, I just don't think they have an opportunity.
No, and Oregon is going to need a big day. I mean, Oregon State's going to need a big day from Cole Branson at quarterback.
Right.
It as sad as it is. I mean, you're going to have to go toe to toe with Nix, who outside of that one game where he was kind of banged up and left the game early, and Oregon ended up losing that game. Let's not forget they were driving down to tie that game up.
Yeah.
He gets hurt. They end up losing an unfortunate game, but Bo Nix, the turnaround that I've seen. And coach, this is a kind of a narrative around college football this year because we've seen Bo Nix do it. We've seen Hendon Hooker do it. We've seen Lindsey Scott at the FCS level do it because he won't playing like that at Nichols.
No.
And so we've consistently seen these transfer quarterbacks take a step up in the level of their game. And man, Bo Nix has been elite this year, running the football and also in the air. He's been super efficient as well, completing up over 70% of his passes. And I think the biggest thing for Oregon, and this is, I want to give a big shout out to Dan Lanning because the criticism you hear a lot, coach, of hiring a defensive minded head coach is that they never get the offense together.
Right.
They're like, those are usually low scoring teams. They play no defense. I mean, they play no offense, but they got a great defense. He found a great offensive coordinator in Kenny Dillingham, who's a young up and coming guy, and how balanced they are is scary because even if you stop Nix, Irving and that rushing attack can get going, and they have a whole group of guys. They got 2-3 guys that can get off in any given game. And if you're a defensive coordinator, that gives you a lot to think about. And Oregon State's played really well this year on the defensive side of the football. But what are they going to take away? Are they going to let Nix get off? And if he's on, I really find it hard that they win this game. But they take Nix away. Are they able to slow down the run enough for their quarterback and their offense to get going enough?
And that's the thing. You hit it on the head. Oregon has several guys that can take it 80. And when you have several guys that can take it 80, trust me, as a guy that's been on the other side of the ball coaching defense, it's tough to say we'll just live with this. Because, living with that puts you weak in other areas with those other 4 guys or whatever, however you want to put it. And it goes back to like what you're saying with the transfer thing and with Bo. I'm really happy for the kid. Don't know the kid from Adam, but I think the change of scenery for him probably was the best thing, because you got to remember the expectations that he came out of high school with, and then being in that area, going across the country, getting away from that had to have been, a breath of fresh air for him. Just happy for that kid, and the criticism he took being at the other school, to see him meet the expectations that he came in with is huge, huge, huge. And, like you said, sometimes it takes a change. And when you got a defensive coach that brings in an offensive guy and is willing to let him do what he's supposed to do without, hey, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, we got this. You have to tip your hat to that coach, and he's done exactly that. For over 500 yards a game, that's impressive.
It really is. And the other X factor, too, is, Coach, we talk about teams being prepared for certain moments. If your team's never been tested, you don't know how they're going to do when they're faced with adversity. For Oregon, they know how to win close, low-scoring games. They won 2017 last week against a top 10 Utah team. They've won these high-scoring games against Washington State, 44-41. They beat a top 10 UCLA team, 45-30. They can get up there. The one thing we haven't seen Oregon State do is win a high-scoring game, like you said. If this thing gets into the high 20s, the 30s, possibly even the 40s, who's going to be more prepared to make that play to win the game? Because Oregon's not going to flinch. It's Oregon State going to flinch in that big moment when they need a touchdown to keep this game going.
And those are things that can't be simulated. You've had to have that real live game action of having to go down and put it in the box. And when the score, like you said, is 44-40, those are things you can't put into practice and have your team ready to go, because they've never been in the shootout. They don't understand that thing. And like I told you way back shows ago, momentum's a real thing. And Oregon has the opportunity, has the playmakers on both sides of the ball to flip any momentum that they face at any point in time. They can be down 14, you kick it off, and boom, there goes Bo Nix for 70 yards. And the momentum that you thought you had is gone. And now you went from up 14-7, and now you're hanging on for dear life, and you're in the lead. But if you have not faced that, that's tough to simulate in practice.
It definitely is. So, Coach, Oregon's a 3-point favorite. Do you like the Ducks in this matchup, or are you going with the Beavers this weekend?
Man, I like the Ducks. I actually like them by more than 3. But, the guys that put that number to it know what, way more than I do. But I like Oregon to do this one. Not just because they they put up 500 yards a game, but because I'm sure they're going to come out with a uniform nobody has seen.
They actually might lose to uniform battle. I don't know if you saw, Navy's got the cleanest NASA uniforms I think I've ever
I
seen.
gotta go check that out. I gotta go check
Oh,
that out because you're
listen,
saying big words right there now.
yeah, I'm telling you, they might be some of the cleanest uniforms I've seen. Eh,
I gotta go check that out.
yeah, you got to go check that out, man. I might try to get the picture up here on the stream, but I got Oregon too. I got them covering. I like Oregon by 10 this weekend over Oregon State. Just on the road, it could be tricky. Bo Nix is known to struggle at times on the road, but yeah, I think Oregon's going to find a way to get it done. Man, give them the Ducks by 10. But coach, you want to talk about turning the corner? Marcus Freeman has Notre Dame playing a whole nother level of football after an 0-3 start. They're sitting at 8-3, top 15 in the country, traveling to USC to knock off the Trojans, sitting at 10-1, sixth in the country, a 6:30 p.m. Central kickoff on ABC. Coach, what have you seen different with Notre Dame, and how hard is it for a coaching staff to get the team refocused and reel off 8 straight wins after starting out 0-3, including a loss to Marshall?
That's tough because and I'm happy for him um, because after that third loss, I think they were willing to pass the collection plate around and see if they couldn't get that buyout money because I'm sure they were like, what do we got ourselves into? Um, but to reel off 8 in a row, man, I mean, that's impressive in itself, but just what makes it even more impressive is to keep those kids grounded, man. You get to about 4 in a row, a lot of times they start smelling themselves, we are who we are, and then, boom, that fifth game, you find yourselves in trouble. But to reel off 8 in a row, um, hats off to him and that coaching staff, man. And I need to find them at the coaches convention here and figure out what they've been saying throughout these weeks to keep their kids, keep their eyes down and continue just to blow through win after freaking win, man. That's impressive.
Especially with battling through quarterback injuries, battling through players, not necessarily living up to the hype, a lack of execution early.
Holding on.
Yeah, I mean they've done an excellent job, including multiple ranked wins in this run. But on the flip side, there could be a strong argument they have not seen an offense as explosive as what they're going to see this weekend. We know what comes with the territory of facing Lincoln Riley offense. I mean, he's another level, and when you have a kid as talented as Caleb Williams, throwing to a kid as talented as Jordan Addison, and then you get an all-conference running back and Dobb back there that can take it to the house as well, almost 1,000 yards rushing this year. They have so many weapons, coach. The one question I have is, who do you take away, and how do you possibly stop it? Especially when Notre Dame, especially early in the season, really struggled at times defensively, giving up the big play. Now they've really corrected that recently. They've really been rolling on the defensive side of the football. But my problem has been, I don't think if Notre Dame lets USC get to 30, I don't know
So,
if they got a chance. I
well,
just
this is,
I don't trust Notre Dame's offense.
well, it's another game like we talked about. If it turns into a track meet, one team's in trouble, and that one team is Notre Dame. It's kind of crazy to think that that passing combination that USC has taken so long to jail, but it's jail. It's there now. And you're talking about a squad that's putting up, again, over 500 yards of offense, uh, 43, 44 points a game. Now, the saving grace, I think, for Notre Dame is that they give up close to 400, but can Notre Dame take advantage of the pass? Because that's where USC seems to struggle for whatever reason, stopping the pass, giving up almost 300 yards a game in the air. But Notre Dame has to be able to find a consistent pass attack, and I just don't know if they can do that if it turns into a track meet. If it turns into a track meet, I just don't think Notre Dame has an opportunity. USC just has athlete after freaking athlete after freaking athlete.
You're going to need Drew Pine to play
Crazy.
arguably the best game of this. I mean, you got to have him come out on fire. I mean, listen, he's played well since he's been in that QB1 spot. 19 touchdowns, only 5 picks. But
Right.
Caleb Williams, if you're talking about him and what he could do at quarterback, this could be a Heisman moment for him. These next 2 weeks are important. You get a top 15 matchup with Notre Dame, and you get a top probably 10 matchup if Oregon wins this weekend, and so does USC. Top 10 matchup in the Pac-12 championship. You're
It's gonna be
sitting at
crazy.
3,400 yards through the air, 33 passing touchdowns. You got numbers on the ground. If he puts up two big performances, I won't be surprised if we're sitting in New York and Caleb Williams is holding up that Heisman in early December.
And you're speaking about Heisman. That's what Payne has got to play himself into this game in order for Notre Dame to, to me, to win it. I mean, but when you're talking about what Coach Riley has done, man, they were forgotten for a minute there, and they just kept doing what they do, and here they are, top 10 in the country, mainly because of that pass attack, I think. Defensively, they've kind of held on just a little bit. But here's something I don't know if you know. Well, I know you know because you know everything. But in Notre Dame's losses, they didn't score over 30.
Yep.
USC, could get to 30 before halftime. Are they going to be able to match that? I didn't realize that. I kind of looked when you sit the games, went and looked, and I was like, wow, okay, those 3 losses, they were under 30. That ain't good. That matchup's going to be tough. But they got to have a Heisman-like performance from their quarterback as well, I think, in order to stay into this thing.
It's going to be it will just be good if you're a Notre Dame fan. I never talk moral victories, but based on the way you started the season, if as long as Marcus Freeman can keep this one close and competitive, man, you got to feel good going into next year. You got a top 10 recruiting class coming in. You had all these injuries. You started off the season. I mean, there were people calling for his job, coach, in September.
Yeah, that's what I said. They were ready to pass around the collection plate.
It's ridiculous. But coach, USC's a 5.5-point favorite. Do you like the Trojans, or are you taking the Fighting Irish in a big upset on Saturday night?
I like what Coach Freeman's done, but I can't step out there on that plank and just expect that to happen. And they're on the road.
Yep.
That's the other thing. Travel plays a part in it. You know what I mean? I got to go USC, and I got to go USC at least by, I'm gonna say 2 touchdowns. We're gonna say USC by 12. I'm gonna take that 12.
I like that. Yeah, I had USC at 14, possibly 17. I think Notre Dame keeps it close early. Now, let's not forget they played Ohio State really well in Columbus to start the season. That was their first loss of the season. I just think USC has too much firepower and they're going to pull away late because if Notre Dame's not able to consistently establish drives, that defense is going to be out on the field for a long time.
Right.
They're going to start getting tired. That's when
Yep.
mistakes happen.
Yep.
One person out of place, one play missed. USC's going for 6, and that's the type of explosiveness they have. Give me USC by 14-17 this weekend over Notre Dame. But coach, the game of the week by far, number 3 Michigan, number 2 Ohio State, 11 a.m. Central kickoff on Fox. I hate the 11 a.m. kickoff. We'll talk about that later. Coach, this one's a big one, and the big question mark, the storyline around this game isn't even just a rivalry or Michigan winning last year, breaking the streak. It's, is Blake Corum going to play?
And they've kept that close to the vest.
As he should. I was
Yeah.
asked if I agree, and I don't blame him one bit. I don't want Ohio State to have a single clue if he's getting on the bus or not.
And I think, the way they've done it, man, hats off to them, because you usually always get a leak.
Yep.
Somebody always usually leaks, but no one's leaked, man. Hats off to them for that. That's it. I think it comes down to that. And if he does, it comes down to the second half of it. Can Michigan DBs match up with Ohio State's receivers? To me, we got a situation where this could be a track meet, man. Or it could be a grinded out 24-21 type of situation. It's going to be interesting to see if he plays, and if he does play, where is he? How close is he to being himself? And this is a 11 o'clock. I didn't get a chance to check the weather. What the weather going to be like? That's major.
44 and cloudy.
Oh, that's 88 degrees normally for them then. If it's 44, that's usually 88. But how close is he going to be to 100% if he gets on the bus and if he steps off and he's in warm up? Where is he? 100%? Probably not. But how close to that will he be?
I was really shocked to see the spread on this game. I really
Me
was.
too. Me
Seven and a
too.
half.
Me too.
That's that's tough. I thought this was gonna be like a 2-3 point spread. I really did. I mean, I guess home field counts for three, so you're looking at 4.5 point spreadish, but still, with Corum, there's a lot of Heisman talking. I listen, Caleb Williams, in my opinion, CJ Stroud, they're gonna be probably the top two. But if you're giving it to the most valuable player in college football to his team, I don't think there was a more evident case of that happening than when Blake Corum went out last week with an injury. In the first half, he puts up over 100 yards and a touchdown. Michigan's cruising. He leaves and they escape.
A grinding
Uh,
halt.
it, yeah, I mean, that offense, he is everything. I mean, they're going to put up probably 30 points in that game on his back. And as soon as he goes out, man, that offense couldn't move the football, and that's why it's so big. If Corum doesn't play for me, man, I don't see. I don't. That Ohio State might win this thing by 14 because I just
Or
don't
more.
trust. Yeah, I don't trust Michigan to move the football. Now McCarthy, he's solid, man. Listen, 14 touchdowns, 2 picks, but there's been a lot of talk about him being able to lead an offense by himself, and this isn't the game you want to figure it out if he
No.
can or not. Like you better
No.
know if your quarterback can lead an offense going against Ohio State, who is electric this year. And this, in my opinion, if Michigan's defense can come to play like they did last year, and last year too, the biggest thing was they won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. The offensive line for Michigan pushed Ohio State around, didn't struggle at all to move the football on the ground, and Ajabo and Hutchinson, both now in the NFL, absolutely terrorized Ohio State's backfield and shut everything down, got pressure on Stroud, made him very uncomfortable in that game. Who's stepping up for Michigan this year? Who's the Ajabo? Who's the Aiden Hutchinson that in the big moment can go make big plays? And can your offensive line push around an Ohio State defense that has really been rejuvenated this year? They go get Knowles from Oklahoma State. He's turned this defense around, and they made a complete 180 from what they were last year, allowing less than 285 yards per game right now. If Ohio State's defense can come to play and Corum's not 100%, man, you got to like the matchup right now for Ohio State in this one.
Well, you hit on a point that I got wrote down right here. Can Michigan make Stroud uncomfortable? A. And B, can they control the clock? Because I think that's their only hope of keeping this thing down, especially if they don't have their starting queue. And the only problem, not to say that the number two, because I'm sure Coach Harbaugh was not going to get caught like he got caught a couple of years ago in the quarterback, because that was always a knock. He could never get a quarterback. He could never get a quarterback. I'm sure he didn't just get loaded with one. But can that one kid get the other 84 kids to follow him and believe in him? I think when that happened last week, they were kind of, and they had practice. So, we don't know. They know. I'm sure at some point when that happened, they were like, oh, snap, what are we going to do now? And, it kind of went that way, as you said, with the score. So did he have a better week? How many reps did he take? And in those reps, how many of his teammates did he win over if he has to be the starter? I think that's going to be huge. And if they can make Stroud uncomfortable, like you just said, like they did last year, and control that clock, they have a chance on the road. But it's a road game, man. It's a road game versus a number two team who I think has something to prove. They hadn't been talked about all year, so to speak. I think they have a huge chip on their shoulder. At home, I got to take the Buckeyes. I got to take the Buckeyes.
And Corum's injury, by the way, is a lot bigger too, because Donovan Edwards has been banged up too this year. So they're down possibly top two running backs not being 100%. And for me, coming into this one, if Corum was healthy, I think Michigan wins this one. It's just the unknown, because I think he'll play, Coach. I don't think there's any question between the two of us. Like in a game like this, unless he cannot walk, he's going out there to at least take a shot at it.
Well, let me
But
make sure I clear that up. Like you said, Now, when we're talking about the QB situation, what I mean by that is it's solely on him.
Oh yeah,
It's
for sure.
solely on him. Not about the number two guy. It's solely on whoever steps out there at quarterback. And like I said, we know Coach Harbaugh is not afraid to go, hey man, sit next to me. Number two, you go. Number two, you come back. All right, one, you go. He's not afraid to play both, but now that he feels like he has one to stabilize it, can that kid be that kid if the stud doesn't play? You know what I mean? That one guy, that star, their bell cow, which everybody knows who's their bell cow. Can he lead them? You know, can he get those other guys to trust him enough to where, okay, we're not going to run it as much. We're going to put the ball in his hands. Can he get it done? Did he win them over this week in practice in 7-on-7? In team drills, did he win them over enough? Because I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he didn't take a whole lot of carries during the week. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say he didn't do that. So during those team drills, 1 versus 2, offense versus scouts, I'm sure he took no reps. But they had to, you know, as much time as they could put into the pass game, I think they had to do it just as a plan B. Now, did he win anybody over, or did he farther put more doubt in everybody's eyes, like, you know, in everybody's head, like, man, can we do it without the run game? That's what I mean by that situation.
Oh yeah, I agree. And you know, listen, McCarthy's kind of been the guy this year, but I mean, listen, Cade McNamara has started, so it'll be interesting to see if McCarthy has a atrocious first half. If he leans toward put McNamara in, who was the guy last year, so we'll have to see. But Corum would be my X factor, and also CJ Stroud against this defense. Man, listen, the secondary for Michigan is no joke. They've been excellent this year against the
Gotten
pass.
better.
Is he
Gotten
going
better.
to he's a quarterback that doesn't make a lot of mistakes, especially turnover wise. If he can play a clean game, Ohio State is a tough team to beat. And then also if Mayan Williams gets it done on the ground, Ohio State becomes terrifying if they can be balanced, which I think Michigan's talented enough to take one thing away. But it's, can Ohio State make that other thing work? And also Marvin Harrison Jr. has been electric this year at the wide receiver spot. The kid is different. I'm just going to put that out there. Over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns right now. And the Buckeyes have about 3-4 deep at wide receiver that any one of them can take over the game. But Harrison has been that guy. Coach, if Corum was 100%, I'm riding with the Wolverines all day. But due to the uncertainty of how healthy he is, Edwards potentially being a question too, I
You
just
can't
can't
make
take.
it a pick 'em. You can't make this game a pick 'em. You got to
Oh,
choose a
I
side.
agree.
You got to
No,
choose
I'm
a
riding with
side.
the Buckeyes.
Okay.
I'm riding with the Buckeyes this week. I think it's going to come down to McCarthy versus Stroud. I can't pick McCarthy over Stroud right now. Stroud's playing at an
No.
elite level. He's got more weapons. I think Ronnie Bell's great at wide receiver, but Marvin Harrison in that group is just different. I think Ohio State's defensive progression from last year is the difference. Give me the Buckeyes by 7 this weekend over the Wolverines in Columbus.
That's with or without?
That I think that's just with him playing probably he might be at 65-70%, I think.
Okay. 7. Well, we picked all the same, man. So I guess either we're going to be looking really good or we're going to look really bad, because I can't go against the Buckeyes at home. They're at home. The uncertainty around Michigan's offense. And then that receiver room the Buckeyes have, man, is just, it's crazy. You know, you take one away, that's fine. We got another one. You take 2 away, that's fine. We got another one. And they just go about their business, man. I just don't know if Michigan's defense can continue through a 4-quarter game to hold it close. If it's got to be one of those situations where Michigan just tries to chew clock, I don't know if they can keep it under wraps. If it gets away and it gets up to a 10-point lead, I think the pressure really falls on Michigan at that point. That's why I got to go with the Buckeyes. One's averaging 47 points. The other one's averaging 40 points. I mean, that's a coin flip. But the home team in that situation, man, with that crowd, what's at stake, I think Ohio State by 10.
I like it. So Well, we went chalk this week, man. Me and Coach got Florida State over Florida, Oregon over Oregon State, USC over Notre Dame, and both of us got the Buckeyes winning a top 3 matchup over the Wolverines. But Coach, man, we got a few more minutes here. We went straight FBS this week, man, with the playoffs starting in FCS football this week. Do you have a favorite? Who do you think takes home the Natty in Frisco before we get out of here?
Man,
Just off top of your head, preliminary, just gut feeling based on who got in.
because I thought you were going to bring that back, man. I got to pull up my notes on that deal. But, you know, I said I want to get out there and actually see a game there in that venue. Have you seen a game there?
No.
Have you made one out there?
No, I was supposed to go cover the game last season. I got COVID right before, so I had to scratch that.
So you hadn't seen a game because on television it looks awesome. It looks like one of those situations of where it's a great venue, man. I think one of those deals. I'm trying to get back to my notes where I don't understand, how you don't want to play there. But where's my notes? You threw me a curveball.
I did.
Talk about it, and then here we are.
Oh no, you ain't gotta break nothing down, man. We're just spitballing now. Just a gut feeling based on who's in there, because I know there was a lot of controversy over who got in and who didn't, and there's some big games this weekend, man. I'll be down in Hammond this weekend covering Idaho versus Southeastern Louisiana, man. Really, really excited to see Giovanni McCoy and that Idaho team. But be interesting.
As I'm going through, how did you feel about the seedings? Did you feel it was pretty fair, or what were your thoughts with that? Because I know it was a lot of talk about who got in, who didn't get in, where so-and-so should have been, where this person should have been, that kind of thing.
I don't like the seeds, especially like who got what seed. I think I don't understand how North Dakota State got such a high seed, like a number 3 seed over Montana State. I need
to
that
hear
was
name alone. I think that's because of the name.
Yeah, we know what it is. Unless they're odds are they're probably going to be in the semifinals at the end of the day. I mean, we know what it is. They got some tough matchups, but the reason I didn't like it is Montana State did everything they were supposed to do, and you stick them in a bracket where Weber State's probably going to win that first round matchup, and you get a rematch with Weber State where, if you remember, we covered that game. They lost on 8 points from the long snapper, so you've got to have a brutal rematch game the second round. Then you're probably getting William and Mary, who's no joke. And that's next been your dark round,
horse, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely a dark horse. And then on the other side, you get placed on the side with South Dakota State.
And that, to me, is a situation where I think they've got to look at it, because I think it's unfair, because like you said, you've done everything you're supposed to do. And then I guess, once you get to a certain point, it is what it is. But I think at the end of the day, you will want the best product to meet up in that final, Elite Eight to the Final Four. You don't want, I don't think you would like or should put it to where it's a 1 versus 2 in the first round. Just because I think it just kind of lessens what it is you want to do. But, who am I to say? But if I had a chance to have my number 1 seed on the other side, or who we perceive to be the top 4 teams, I would kind of put them in different spots. Just to make sure, or try to make sure, because anybody can be beat on any given day, that we have that opportunity to get the best 2 to Texas. Because at the end of the day, it's anybody can be beat. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we put the best product on the field. I don't know about your iPhone, mine updated. So I'm going back through my notes. But, I think Montana, I kind of rode with them all year. The Jag, can they play away from home? What do you think?
Who?
Jag Rapids.
Oh, they got home field all the way through because they're the number 1 overall seed.
When they get to Frisco.
Oh, that's a tough one, because, I mean, they've only been to Frisco once. They've never won a natty, so I mean, it would probably depend on who they face because it would be amazing to see South Dakota State, North Dakota State, and Frisco rematch. I mean, that would be just I don't think there's a better matchup out there. Like if that happens, especially with them being on opposite sides of the bracket. But and looking at the other side of the bracket, because this is the problem is you got some killers on the South Dakota State side because Delaware's probably coming out of that first round matchup against St. Francis. They've made runs in the playoffs the last few times they've been in there. Then you got that Holy Cross Fordham where either like those teams are kind of dark horses in there. We know what Tim DeMoret is. We know what Holy Cross is. And then you got William and Mary. And then you got Weber State, who might be a first round team, but don't sleep on Weber State. They can make a real run to Frisco. And you got Montana State over there. Like that side of the bracket is brutal. And then the only reason I say that is because you look at the other side. You have North Dakota State, who's proven Sanford
Right.
hasn't made a run in the
Nope.
playoffs.
And we talked about that.
UIW's never won a playoff game, and Sac State's never made it past the quarterfinals.
And that's
And
who I
it's
would like
like,
to go with. But like you said, it's just once you start getting through those games, man, and Sac State, 2 seed, once you start getting through that, man, you know, how do how does it go? And
yeah,
it's a coin flip. I want to go with them because I felt like what they do at this time of year is a good recipe. Running it, putting it on the ground, and they can do that effectively, as we've covered them, throughout the season. But I thought for sure that you would have a vested interest in that Sanford Idaho game. Not
that's
saying
gonna be
either
a
one
big
of
one.
those are going to make it, but that's going to be crazy. What did you think about them getting a 6 seed?
Thought they should have been higher. I think they had a better resume than North Dakota State.
Other than the
If
name,
you, yeah, other than the name, like I really do think, and I definitely thought they had a better. William and Mary went 10-1. They had an FBS win over Charlotte, and that they lost one game to Elon, who was in the playoffs as well. But Sanford went
right?
undefeated in FCS play, multiple ranked wins. Yeah, they didn't have an FBS win, but they played Georgia. I'm sorry, like
I mean, that's Georgia.
what are you gonna do? Yeah, what do anyone else in the playoffs gonna beat Georgia? No, probably not.
No,
Definitely not. So I don't know how that got held against them, and they've been playing lights out. I think it's more of a perception of they don't know whether Incarnate Word, they don't know whether Holy Cross, they don't know whether Sanford are realistic contenders because they've never done it. Like that's
right,
the thing is like they don't have a lot of big playoff experience, especially making deep runs, and also Holy Cross coming from the Patriot League, kind of looked down upon as a conference. But man, I gotta rob. Even though they're on the tough side of the bracket, I think it's going to prepare them to make a run. They were on a tough side of the bracket last year too. Montana State is going to be terrifying this year, in my opinion. They got their All-American running back coach is going to come into the playoffs now healthy with 0 carries on the year, completely fresh.
which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and they're leading the country in rushing right now with backup running backs and backup quarterbacks, and I mean, and they also get 2 offensive linemen back in the next 2 weeks, and they get a bye week. Just
We'll
in
see.
case they needed more rest, they get a whole bye week now too to rest up, and they're going to get home field up until the semifinals due to them being the highest seed in their bracket.
Right, right,
I mean, it's just I think Montana State, especially with the fact that they know what it takes to get to Frisco now, that team could be terrifying if they get healthy. And the interesting thing though, here's the kicker is that you got Montana State who runs the ball super efficiently. South Dakota State's only allowed one or two teams to run for over 100 yards. They got one of the best rushing defenses in the country. That matchup is going to be insane. But when I look on the other side of the bracket, man, as much as North Dakota State, this isn't, this is probably one of their weaker teams. That Montana North Dakota State matchup, if that happens, could be extremely interesting. But how do they handle the explosive offenses on that side of the bracket? Because you've got a
right,
Sanford who elite quarterback. You've got an Incarnate Word if you meet up with them, an elite offense with an elite quarterback. Does that cause North Dakota State any problems? And that's the big question. I don't they haven't seen that type of offense in the MVFC because everyone runs to football. So it's
right.
a big question mark on how they handle a Michael Hires or a Lindsey Scott or anyone like that. I think Sac State scheme plays kind of into North Dakota State's hand a little bit, where it's like they're going to be a tough physical team. And also, North Dakota State, Hunter Lipke's banged up. Is he going to be healthy for the playoff run? That's a big question mark for me. So there's a lot of questions surrounding, North Dakota State right now. But I think Montana State, if I had to put my money on someone, I like them to go to Frisco and get the national championship. Their first ones, I think, the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
A long time. Now, I'm gonna go surprise because I put it down because this was your guy, and you preached it all year, and you won me over. And I actually went and looked at some of his stuff, man, just because he's so electric. I can see Lindsey Scott leading his team there, just because of all the things you just said. None of those guys have really faced that during the year, and you got basically 4 to 5 days, to prepare for him. And I don't know how many people have him on the sideline to do what he does versus their starting defense and the scout look. And all you got to do is win and move on. He is who he is, which he's proven all year. I think they can do it. They're going to need a little luck, no doubt about it. Some people are going to have to get upset for them to get there. But I like the dark horse. I like Lindsey Scott and UIW.
I love it.
I like that.
The biggest thing for Incarnate Word, I think, for their chances to go, because I think they can beat Sac State. I really do. I know Sac State's been great this year. They're undefeated. Man, I'll be very interested to see how that matchup will play out in the quarterfinals. But if North Dakota State can get knocked off, and Incarnate Word can get there with home field advantage or having to go to Sanford, or having Montana come all the way over to San Antonio, that would be huge. But go into Fargo in December, that's just going to be a tough matchup all around. So I think that, to me, is the only thing Incarnate Word. If Incarnate Word can get North Dakota State knocked out, they might be walking to Frisco.
That's what I said. They got to get some people to help them out with some upsets and some of the other brackets. But if they can do that, because I can see, Elon shouldn't be, and I don't want to, discredit anything Elon's done up to this point. That should be something that they should be able to handle. And then, like you said, they get to Sac State. If they can get up on them early, like Nebraska days of old, if they can get up on them 14 early, that puts a lot of pressure on them to have to do something they don't want to do. And that puts them one game closer to either like you said, a Sanford, North Dakota State, Idaho, Montana. Depending on who it is, it could still be a situation where they're still comfortable when they don't have to go to knee-deep snow to play a football game. So I like them. I think they can do it. But they're going to need a little help opposite of them in different brackets. But you sold me on Mr. Scott a long time ago, and I think he's going to rise to the occasion.
I love it, man. That was just complete and outrageous year of things that he's accomplished, man. I think he should probably walk away with the Walter Payton this year. I don't see.
Shouldn't even be close.
DeMoret.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be a close second. I think, I was talking to some people who were arguing that there should be some other people in the top two. We both know who that is, but I was like, listen, it's a top two of Lindsey Scott and Tim DeMoret, and there's not even a close second. I mean, there's nobody even within plain distance of them. Like,
you can't make it make sense.
No, that not legit. I mean, you can't argue strength of schedule. You can't argue signature wins, big moments, like nothing. Like there's not a single thing you can take away from either of those guys.
Nope, because when you put it on paper, it don't even come close.
No, and they both broke long-time records. Tim DeMoret set the NCAA record for passing touchdowns in a regular season with 53. Lindsey Scott hit 50 touchdowns as well and reset the passer efficiency record, which has been held since before I was born.
Changed the game. And, like we said about Lindsey Scott, the way that he's been doing things has been second to none. As Miss Frederick joins us for the last part of the show.
Hello.
How you doing?
So I think, that award it's a 2-person race. That's a 2-horse race.
Yeah.
And go from there. And then I got one other question for you, man, before we get out of here. When you're talking FCS playoffs, do you feel or do you think that there should be more thought process into helping schools? Because, and when I say help, a FAMU gets in like they did last year. Luckily, the draw that they got was just down I-10. Should the NCAA looking to possibly do this as a way of getting bowls implemented into FCS football, meaning that these brackets are now called the Bluebloods game, bowl game, where you're getting sponsors and you're helping teams get from Florida to, luckily they didn't get a Montana draw, that kind of thing. What's your thought process on that? What do you think about that?
I would love to see bowl games in the FCS. The problem is I don't know if the NCAA is going to sanction it because with the Celebration Bowl, it took years for them to kind of get
Make it
the
legit.
legislature, behind the scenes. So, because that's supposed to be, the NCAA likes that distinction between FBS and FCS. You're supposed to have a playoff championship subdivision at FCS. You're supposed to have the bowl games at the FBS. So it'd be a fundamental change for an organization that has been historically slow to adapt, is how I framed it on my show. Is I haven't seen anything from the NCAA since I've been covering college football that would suggest to me that they're going to move with the times anytime soon. They're always going to be 10 years late on everything. Transfer portal, NIL, you can go down the list of things. But they have started make some improvements. So the reason FAMU now did not get stuck with the Montana is because the first round matchups have to be within 400 miles of the school. So when they're seeding everyone, they make all the first round matchups. They schedule or pair as many 400-mile or less matchups as possible. It's quote unquote a bus trip. And then those matchups are geographically seeded to the next closest seed game. That's why you see with the bracket some of the first games like the Southeastern Louisiana, Idaho, because that was one of the games that couldn't be 400 miles. Those were the last 2 teams in. There was no one. Idaho messed it up because there's no one close to Idaho.
No one.
At the end of the day, I mean that at least was in the first round, but that's why Southeastern Louisiana was paired with Sanford in that bracket. That way, if they win, they just got to go to Alabama.
Right.
And so that's one improvement. Also, the NCAA does refund all traveling schools all travel cost expenses already. So
Right.
if FAMU would have had to travel to Montana, all that travel would have been reimbursed at the end of the day. Now, you might not have made any money, but at least you're not in the red with that. But I do think bowl games would be better because, like you say, you can get sponsors, you can get better TV deals, you can do things like that. But I just think the NCAA is too slow for change. So if that does happen, man, it's going to be a few years down the line, if anything.
But I'm glad you touched on that, and maybe on the other ones, your other platforms as well, because I got into a Twitter fight that I just said, you know what, you win. But the reimbursement deal, because everybody thinks it's just a lose-lose situation. Fans shouldn't have won because it cost them money to go for that. No, it didn't cost them anything, basically, because like you said, they get the money back. I think that part of the deal, people don't really know or understand, even though you have somebody that's playing it in FCS football, myself, who know that if Alcorn had made the playoffs and we had to go to freaking SWAC, whatever we spent going to SWAC would be coming back to us from the NCAA. Whereas everyone else is saying, oh, that's a bad deal. Why would you want to go to the playoffs? It costs you more money to do that. No, it don't cost you any money. At the end of the day, you get it back. So I think that's something that needs to be also communicated to just a casual fan to make sure that everybody understands that, it's still a draw. It's still something you want to do if you are fortunate to do it. But at the end of the day, I just think the NCAA could probably make it a lot easier for some of those schools by formulating a bowl system, even though it's still in the playoff format, if that makes sense. And I'm sure they won't be calling me anytime soon to explain that, but
I agree. And there's with the conference you coach in, there's a generational disconnect too of some of the changes that have been made, because back in the day it was way biased where you had a bunch of southern teams having to go up into the snow and everything, but they don't know that because they haven't paid any attention to it since the 80s, and they're like, well, back in 1978 we had to go do this, and it's like, okay, but that's not that has nothing to do with 2022 right now. Like it
No,
wouldn't happen. Like Jackson State or Alcorn State wouldn't play Eastern Washington in the first round of the playoffs ever. Like it just would not happen. And with the Southeast teams, the good part is there's so many teams in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Florida, that and Georgia. There's always going to be a team close to you to get paired with. Like this is the most rich area for football. The problem is when you have an Idaho be a first round matchup, and then all the other West teams have bye weeks, and there's no one to pair them up with.
somebody's got to go.
Yeah, and luckily Idaho didn't put up a big bid, and they got to come to Louisiana. So even southeastern Louisiana didn't have to go to Idaho, and also Idaho plays in a dome. And
Right.
because the
So
biggest thing was when people were talking about the whole North Dakota State thing, they were like, "Well, we don't want to go play up in the cold." It's like they play in a dome.
yeah,
What do you
I
like?
mean,
The
yeah,
weather wouldn't play a factor. Like they just turn the lights on in the building that they play in.
and set it for 75, and here you go.
Yeah,
Because like back in the 90s, Steve McNair era, they win the SWAC, they get in the playoffs, they got to go to Youngstown. I can remember
yeah,
watching that game as a kid, um, and snow was piled up behind the bench as tall as the bench, that kind of thing. I think is what people still think about, and not knowing how the logistics of it work. Now, the deeper you go, the farther out you have to go if you're a lower seed. I just, think that's information, and maybe that's another show
yeah.
that kind of gets people involved in knowing the whole circle of things. And also, I said that was one question. The ranking situation throughout the year, I think that has to be looked at as well, just because uh, I get it. There's so many FCS teams, but I think they've got to find a way to get more voters in more regions to where when they come, they can say, hey, man, I've seen this team firsthand, match the numbers with that team out in the West. Uh, they deserve consideration for being in the top 25 in FCS football. I think that kind of gets overlooked a lot, uh, just because, if that makes sense.
Well, with that too, there's a lot of confusion on the fact that the polls have nothing to do with who gets into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that was one thing with like Willie that I was like, bro, like you can't you like I get your like premise of the argument, but the whole like all I do is just point out facts. It's like, bro, if you looked up the facts, it tells you on the playoff committee thing that the poll is like the like 10th
Secondary.
thing they even look at. Like the poll has nothing like just because you're ranked 20th doesn't mean you're getting in the playoffs. Like
Right.
it doesn't work like that. And that's a big confusion is because a lot of the people who are mad that their team didn't get in, whether it's Austin P, because Austin P fans were pissed that they didn't get in. Chattanooga fans were pissed. This isn't just FAMU fans. There were anybody who doesn't make the playoffs are going to have a gripe about the system, but when they get in, it's good. Like, bro, we love it. Like, I'm so glad we're here, and I love how they pick these teams. It was just a lot of misinformation, and I talked about this on my show. Is the media likes to play on people's anger and take
Right.
advantage of their emotion for clicks, and so what you had is all the misinformation the fans were spewing. There were certain media outlets in that circle that were
Keeping it
picking that
going.
up and just adding fuel to the fire with other misinformation and just getting people pissed about issues that really aren't even real. And like
Right.
that's the most frustrating thing. And with the voter thing, the shocking part is, the coaches poll for some, because at the FBS level, the coaches poll is just thrown away. Like nobody looks at the coaches poll at the
Like it
FBS
used to be
level.
back
Like,
in the day. Yeah.
yeah, like it's the AP poll, which is the media poll, and then it's the college football playoff rankings. Like those are the two that are used consistent throughout the year. The FCS is the only level where people somehow put stock in the coaches poll, even though there's been multiple coaches in press conferences this year asked about it, and they said, I've never voted on the coaches poll.
A
They
lot
were
of empty
like,
ballots.
Well, not that. They either a lot of empty ballots or they hand it off to the SID or some
Right.
assistant in the office and they'd fill it out. And it's just, okay, not looking at the games, not watching the games. Okay, did number 3 lose? Well, let's move them down to 8. And whoever's 4 moves up and it's just like a drag and drop thing. And
Yeah.
so that's why you get the confusion of teams being like, well, why is my team 5 in the coaches poll and 10th in the media poll? And it's like, well, because no one's watching the game. So there's no quality losses in the coaches poll. It's just like, did you win or you lose? We don't care who you played. We don't care because they were dropping teams for losing. Like they dropped Sanford a bunch for losing to Georgia. It's like they lost to Georgia in Athens. Like they shouldn't drop in the
No,
FCS poll for
at
losing to
all.
Georgia. And with the media poll, the reason I think, I'm biased, I vote in it because I'm part of the media poll is if you go down, so at the end of like the poll, they have all the voters listed. There's actually 2 to 3 representatives from every single FCS conference in the entire country. And the shocking part is because people always complain about the SWAC and their rankings, the SWAC has the most representatives out of any conference, the 3.
You don't say.
Yeah. If you go look at it, they are tied with the MVFC and everybody with 3 voters on that committee from the SWAC. And then there's a group of national voters that all cover different conferences. There's like a few of us that are like real national, and then there's guys who are national, but they focus on Ivy League, they focus on the SWAC, they focus on whoever. So you have like Emory Hunt, who really focuses on the Ivy League and the SWAC. He's a national voter on there too. You have myself who covers a lot of the SWAC and covers a lot of just general FCS. You have Sam Herder, you have Craig Haley. So there's 54 voters from all across the country on the media poll, and that's the poll that gets the most criticism for not watching the games. And it's like, dude, if there's any poll that people should be upset about, it's the coaches. Because I mean, like you don't have to tell me. I mean, do you see Fred McNair after the game sit down and does he how many Weber State games did Coach McNair watch this year?
I can't speak for him, but I'd go out on a limb and say, yeah, none. I can't
My
speak for him.
point. Listen, I don't blame the coaches. Listen, if I'm getting paid and my sole job is to go win games, I could
I ain't got time
care
for that.
less about no damn
There's
coaches
not a
poll.
time in the day. There's not a time in the day.
No. Like as
There
much as
really
y'all
isn't.
deal with, like if like coach, if we came on here, we had an hour show for you to break down everything that you as an assistant coach is responsible for and compare it to what head coaches at D1 institutions have to deal with, man, we could sit here for 2 hours and Coach McNair could break down the minute things that he has to do that we don't even know about.
Every day. That's on an everyday basis. Exactly.
I'm telling. I'm
Um,
telling, and I don't blame him at all. Because if I was a coach, I wouldn't vote on it. I would hand it to I would just be on the elevator and hand it to somebody and be like, fill this out for me. Submit it by 6.
Here you go, Brian. Here
Yeah,
you go,
yeah. Listen, I'm
Brian.
calling Brian out. I'm texting him after the show. I'm like, Brian, who'd you vote for this week?
Shout out B Harvey. What's up? Uh, so you getting our credentials, man. We're going to cover the Celebration Bowl, right?
Yeah, I've
Bluebloods
already.
Coach's Corner. Yes, sir.
There we go. Hey, we'll be on Radio Row, man. So,
Let's do it.
might have to do that. It's funny because I applied for credentials, but they already have Jackson State on the drop down for like who do you cover in this game.
That's crazy.
It is November 23rd as we're recorded. Like the SWAC championship is a
They
week
don't even
away.
know.
Still
They don't
got.
even know who they're playing. You know, they don't even know who they're
That's what
playing yet. You know what I mean? Man, we gotta do a whole nother show on that as well. But I'm telling Miss Frederick right now that we're going to Celebration Bowl. I'm going to Atlanta, man. We're gonna find merch. We're gonna do it all, man, and we're gonna get in the BMW Dome. What is it? Mercedes Dome? Yeah, that
yeah,
dome.
Mercedes Benz
Mercedes. I know. I was just playing.
calling you out.
I knew she was around there, but we've out of 5 years we've played there 3. We've played the most, so I have a personal locker in there because I've been in there quite a bit, that kind of thing, jabbing at some other folks right now. But man, I appreciate it. Again, man, seeing you there last week early. I don't know how you got there through that traffic, as it took us 30 minutes to get from across campus, and you were on the field when we got to the field. Was
Man,
big
I was sleep.
time.
Hey, I was sleeping in my car in the parking lot behind the building where all y'all's offices are. Like, man, I left because I stayed in Natchez and I left my hotel at 4 a.m. got to the stretch about 5. Now I didn't get on campus till like 6:30
I wish
or
I'd
just
known,
past.
man. You could have got in the office. It wouldn't have been a problem.
Oh no,
Uh,
man, listen, man, I turned the heat on. I put the sun visor up. I was out, man. I took like a good 2.5, 3 hour nap, man. I was out. I brought a pillow. I was good. And then I got up, man. Kind of woke myself up, went to the tailgate, got in the stadium early, man. I was gonna go to the press box and get some heat. And then I was like, I really need to go get some pregame pictures. And then I walked down there and I was like, I wish I would have stayed in the press box. It is cold down here. Jesus.
who tailgate did you hit, man? Because I was gonna point you to a couple.
Oh, Mr.
G and
Kincaid, the A team,
okay,
man, they do it on a
okay,
whole nother level over
okay,
there. They
yeah.
had tables set up. I mean, he was telling me, man, they fed. I mean, it had to be close to 1,000 people. They
Just walk
had
up.
they had Yeah, just walk up. They had tables you could sit at. They had a little thing. They gave you a plate full of everything, tables to sit at. He's a big fan of the show, man. Shout out to Mr. Kincaid if you're watching. But man, he said that they had breakfast. They had like
Yeah.
breakfast to lunch. They had lunch. They had lunch to dinner meal. They had dinner. He said that they had it all.
So my boy DQ, shout out DQ, was trying to get you, and I was like, I dropped the ball on that, man. But they had a breakfast set up, they had a brunch set up, they had lunch before you went in, then they had it after, and then
Mm.
it was another setup. Enterprise, who kind of does rental with us. Hey, anybody you got, bring them over. And they're, we get there, they're trying to feed me before the game. I'm like, I have to go to work. They're like, no, you want something? Take a plate. I can't take a plate to the locker room in
You
pregame. I mean,
walk in,
that's,
walk in.
that don't work that way. But I mean, it was just a incredible atmosphere, man. And again, I'm not a sore loser. I was looking for you because I wanted to do something after the game, but I didn't even know you were in the media room until I
Yeah, I
saw
went.
when you posted
It's
the
because
deal.
Yeah, I went straight to the media room because I didn't know how soon press conferences were going to start. Man, we sat in the media room for like 20 minutes waiting on people to get in there because they had to do prom first, and then they brought in Fred right after, and then I went up to the press box just because I was like, man, the traffic's going to be atrocious getting out of here. So I was just like, I'm gonna go up here, make sure I get the press conferences uploaded, download some pictures, some videos. Man, I was just like, I'm gonna work until I see the traffic kind of die down, and I timed it perfectly, man. As soon as I got everything uploaded, I dipped out. I was straight out.
Because I didn't know he actually came over.
Mhm.
Because at one point they were talking about he would just send his recorded over, something like that, that I kind of heard in passing. But he actually came over to the
Yep.
media room, which I was happy he did that. Um, Now I wasn't happy with the fact that they felt like they were disappointed because they were going. I mean, we are who we are. We're a proud program. We're gonna get every team's best. We get every team's best as well. I don't know if people understand that or know that about us. So I was just happy to see you there, man. Glad you got there. I wish we could have did something other than the night before, which was
For
still
sure.
big. Kids are still upset. Coach, why you didn't get me on? Coach, I didn't even know you were doing that. I
Yeah,
seen
we got
that.
a whole off season. Tell them we got a
Yeah.
whole off season. We got
So they
plenty
were
of
all
content
upset,
coming.
man. They were pretty upset about, oh man, I see. Okay, Claude's your guy. He's Florida. That's why you got Claude. That kind of thing. Miko's from Arizona. He's like, man, no love for the West Coast. I'm like, what are you talking about? I saw the videos. I was like, oh, here we go. That kind of thing, man. But I appreciate it.
Oh,
Um,
for sure, man.
you
Hey,
know,
there'll be a recruiting pitch. NIL in the coach's corner.
Hey, ain't no doubt. So anybody that wants to come on and join Prize Pick and get down with us, get down with us now. Because when we take off, we're gonna look down at you. Nah, I'm just playing. But anybody want to come on, man, come rock with us.
Hey, man. For sure, we're coach, man. Hope so man, guys, we're recording on Wednesday, man. So I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving, man. This will be dropping on Friday, man. So I hope y'all had a great Thanksgiving. Me and Coach will be back next week with some recaps. We'll probably be talking about conference championships, talk a little bit about the FCS playoffs. And we're going to kind of go a little bit more general with these over the next few weeks. And then in the off season, we're going to have special guests galore, man. We got some really big guests lined up. So stay tuned for any announcements on that. But guys, for myself, for Coach Fred, for the Coach's Corner, we are out.